Welcome to our first episode of On the History Trail. I'm your host and tour guide, Mark Nonestied. This new show promises an exciting look at the history in our area, but we will present it to you in a new way, often giving you, the viewer, a behind-the-scenes look as we explore the historic sites and meet interesting people. We will not just visit a site or conduct an interview, but we will dive into the past, shining a light into the nooks and crannies of our history that are rarely looked at. So sit back and relax and follow me as we journey down the history trail. Today we are at the East Brunswick Museum in the heart of the township's historic district. We will be speaking with museum assistant Robert Young to talk about the history of the building and its architectural features. Later, Robert will take us into the basement area of the building for a behind-the-scenes look at the museum's vast collection. And then we are going to do something that not many people have done in this building over the past 144 years. We're going to take you up the bell tower and into the attic and discuss how this building was constructed back in 1862 when Abraham Lincoln was still President of the United States. Buried deep at the archives at East Brunswick Channel 3 was found a dedication tape from October of 1978 during the opening dedication of the East Brunswick Museum. The bicentennial was important on many different levels. Nationally, our country was reintroduced to our colonial history, but more importantly, the bicentennial helped with local historic preservation. Many communities which were caught up in the frenzy of celebrating the 200th anniversary of the founding of our country were looking at what historic resources were within our community, and it was during this time period that there was an active committee in East Brunswick that was looking for ways to protect and preserve the historic sites in our township. And it's from this seed, this ideology, that the museum grew from. Many of the people that you will see in this dedication, such as Joseph Chagnon and Grace Auer, were involved with the museum for many years, and some, like Betty Galgansky, continue to be active with the organization.
By our town fathers, we proclaim this day a day of glorious festivities. Without any further ado, I turn it over to the chairman of the committee.
The township and the council would like to permanently show the appreciation of the township to the organizations which contributed to the creation of the historic district and to the museum. What better moment than the dedication of the museum and the commemoration of the first anniversary of the placement of the district on the National Register of Historic Sites, making Old Bridge the first and only district in Middlesex County to be placed on the National Register.
One of the themes that will come through as this dedication progresses is that we are presenting plaques to citizen groups who have worked on behalf of the museum and who have been involved in one way or another. You'll notice that we will not be recognizing individuals as such, but groups of people who've worked together. And I think that that's an important thing about the museum and about the effort that's gone on here in the historic district. I'd like to read the plaque that we're presenting to the ad hoc committee. Presented on behalf of all East Brunswick residents in appreciation to the ad hoc committee on the museum for unswerving dedication and volunteer efforts on behalf of the historic village of Old Bridge and the museum, presented September 30th, 1978, the dedication of the former Simpson Methodist Church as a museum.
The museum will move in the direction that the citizens of East Brunswick wish it to. But at this particular time, I want to pay particular attention to a very important facet of our life here in East Brunswick. And that is today, we are establishing an institution which we hope will preserve our society and our culture as it existed in the past and as it exists today, and as time passes in the future as it was then.
Councilmember Jerry Hurt will show the township appreciation for the work done by the Historic Village of Old Bridge Community Group. Accepting the plaque would be myself.
Thank you, Betty. It's very, very difficult to stand up here and point out one individual who had a very big part in making the Old Bridge community what it is today. But the Old Bridge Community Group, formed back in 1973, was certainly very, very instrumental in helping develop the growth and the direction of the Old Bridge section of East Brunswick. It's great to know that East Brunswick has the only historic district in the county of Middlesex. And it's great to stand here before you today and celebrate the first anniversary of the National Register for the Historic District. And without saying anything additional, I'd like to present a small token of our appreciation to the Old Bridge Community Group for its partake in the growth of the Old Bridge District. Ready? Thank you.
Thank you. In accepting this plaque today, I am honored. The plaque belongs to the community group. We are a group effort, and nothing can be done by one person. We work together, and we stick together. We're all working for the same end result. It also belongs to the people in the village of Old Bridge. We cannot do the things we do or accomplish the things we try to accomplish without the cooperation of the entire community that lives down here, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
But our commitment in the bicentennial era to the remembrance and the heritage of our community was to purchase, rehabilitate, and then dedicate the Simpson Methodist Church as a township museum. So with that perspective, it gives me very great pleasure to present this plaque to Grace Auer, who was chairman of the Bicentennial Commission.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, members of the council and friends, today marks the culmination of one more important milestone in the history of our community and the fulfillment of one of the lasting reminders of the bicentennial era in East Brunswick. I accept this plaque as a tribute to those who helped to make this museum a reality. As your bicentennial chairperson and president of the Historical Society, I wish to personally thank all of you who have helped to obtain this goal. And I trust that the museum may serve as a source of enlightenment and enjoyment for present and future generations. Thank you.
I have today with me Robert Young, museum assistant for the East Brunswick Museum, and we've been chatting about the history of the building. And Robert, I was wondering if you could share with the audience a little history about the museum.
Well, the museum was built, in 1862. It was originally a Methodist church. You can still see a lot of the original features. There's angel heads, there's ornate plaster and ceiling decorations, and still a lot of original stained glass. So it was a Methodist church, and then it was later on, there was Army barracks added on in the back. There's a few rooms there. But it was originally just a one-room Methodist church.
Okay, and you mentioned the building was originally built in 1862.
Yes, that's right.
And the Army barracks that were attached to the back of the church, what did they use that for?
It was functioned as originally as a social room for, now it functions as some of our, to hold some of our collection. But it was added in the early 1900s as a social room for the church.
Interesting. And when did it open as a museum? What year?
In 1980, we began functioning as a museum.
Okay, great. So the building's been in operation for over 25 years then.
Yep.
Great. And who supports the museum today?
Today, the museum is a volunteer organization. It's supported by the Township of East Brunswick and federal grants.
Okay, great, great. How many volunteers does the museum have?
The museum has a number of volunteers. I'm the only paid member right now, but there's a whole board, and we have a lot of volunteers that help out with different events and things going on at the museum.
Great, and I noticed from walking around there's a wonderful large collection of items here at the museum. What are some of the artifacts that are on display?
We have a lot of different various artifacts. We have a parlor exhibit. There's a kitchen exhibit with antique kitchen items.
All right, which is the area that
we're sitting in. We have an antique dress item area. There's our most famous exhibit is our Harold Hoffman collection of different elephants, who was governor of New Jersey. Just different various artifacts from the area.
Okay, I noticed too there was some farm equipment.
Yeah, we have a big farm equipment collection.
Right. Tell me the elephant collection, that there's a collection of miniature elephants that had once belonged to Harold Hoffman. Do you know how many elephants there are?
There's hundreds of elephants. There's 4 or 5 cases full of his collection.
Full of elephants,
yeah.
huh. Great. What's your most favorite object in the museum?
That's tough. I would have to say that the Hoffman collection is kind of interesting. Just the fact that he went that far to collect all of it, and it was all donated by his family, so.
Great.
It's pretty interesting.
And I noticed too paintings, that there's a collection of paintings in the museum.
Yes. James Crawford Tom. We have the largest collection of James Crawford Tom paintings throughout the museum. He was a local to the area. He actually lived in the area for a while, and his family was very prominent in the area.
Great.
So.
Now, when we were discussing too, with all the artifacts on display, that there's quite a number of items that are in storage also, that aren't always out on exhibit. And I hear we're going to take a sort of a special behind-the-scenes look at the storage area of the museum and take a look at some of the artifacts that are there. So why don't we join us for a behind-the-scenes look at the museum storage area and some of the artifacts that are there. Hey, we're here with Robert Young in the storage area of the museum. This is the basement area underneath. We were talking earlier about the World War II Army barracks, which had originally come from Camp Kilmer and were brought down here after the Second World War and attached to the back of the church. And you mentioned it functioned as a social hall, and the downstairs area now serves as a storage area for the museum collection. And what a tremendous amount of items that are here, and I know you pulled a couple of them out to talk about. What were some of the ones that you have here?
Well, here, we have a large collection of clay, like pottery or fragments.
Okay.
All found locally. We have an extensive collection behind Mark. These were all found in the area, just different, probably dating back to the Lenape Indians. So
these are from the local native people that were here?
Yes, all locals.
And they were found in the area in the farm fields in East Brunswick?
Yep, all locally.
Right, right. Are some of these on display in the...
We do have a few. We have some clay pot fragments upstairs along with some Indian arrowheads. Problem is there's such a small museum. We don't have too much stuff down here. It can't all be on display.
Great.
But
great. What are some other items that you have?
This is a teapot. It was found in South Amboy. It probably dates back to the 1870s. As you can see, we have an accession number tag on it. This it says the year it was donated, and the numbered item.
So
was donated.
The number on it is what? What do we have here?
9874. So it was donated in 1998, and it was our 74th item donated.
That year. Great, great. There was a pottery company in South Amboy called Swan Hill that made, I guess they used what was known as a Rockingham glaze and made pieces that were very similar to this. So this is a great piece, and you said found I guess near where the factory was located.
South Amboy.
Yeah, neat, very neat. What are some other items you have for us?
This is a store ledger book. containing all sorts of different, recorded all sorts of purchases and
Great.
things like
And
that.
what year is this from?
This here says 1868.
1868.
It's pretty.
Okay. Yeah, and I see it says Old Bridge, New Jersey, which would have been referring to this area. Boy, so we can see some of the things that people were purchasing at this store here in the area. What do we got here? We have a pound of butter for 40 cents. And let's see what else we've got in here. Some of the other items. Thing of, what is that?
Some type of biscuit.
Biscuits. Yeah,
12 cents.
For 12 cents.
It's like rifles down here.
Oh yeah, look at that. Huh. Rifles. Huh. Very neat. Very neat. Oh yes, A.J. Disbrow. He was one of the local residents here, and he purchased, what was that? Purchased
Quarter pound of wheat flour, it looks like.
For 43 cents. And a dozen eggs at 28 cents. Very neat. Very neat. So, great. So the wonderful collection of items here, and just shows our viewers how large the museum is and how large of a collection there is. And I understand that the objects sort of rotate. Sometimes these items will come up on display for a while.
Yeah, we have a number of rotating cases upstairs, and when they're not in the case, they're down here stored. So a lot of it gets brought up and put on display during the course of the year.
Great. Well, thank you for taking the time out to show us this collection.
Yeah, no problem.
Robert, you had mentioned earlier in our discussion that your favorite part of the museum was the elephant collection, and well, here we are in the back section of the museum with this large elephant collection. Who did this belong to again?
This belonged to Governor Harold Hoffman. He was governor in the 1930s. He actually was governor when the Lindbergh trial was happening. It's a very extensive collection. The Republican Party's symbol is the elephant. He was a devoted Republican. So you can see he's got thousands of different elephants, varying in sizes, miniature ones.
All right. What are some of the ones in the case here?
There's a lot of miniature ones here. There's a fossil ivory tusk in the back there. I don't know if it can be seen, but that's kind of interesting.
It says from an extinct Alaskan mammoth, 100,000 years old. That's written on the side of it. So, what are some of the other items in the case?
They're just all various elephants. It started out actually, he was given one elephant, and the collection grew, and he never stopped. And it was donated. All the cases, the drapery, everything was all donated by his family to the museum.
Great. Well, thank you for taking the opportunity to show us your favorite part of the museum, the collection of elephants.
Okay.
We are going to go on another special tour. Robert was talking with us earlier about the history of this building, which dates back to 1862. Well, we're going to get a special behind-the-scenes look. We're going to climb up into the bell tower of the building and go into the attic space some 30 feet up. So why don't you join me as we climb up and head up into the bell tower. We just got done climbing up the bell tower, coming up a ladder rungs that are in the side of inside the building. We're about 30 feet up. We're in the attic space over the main gallery of the museum, and for historians there are two great areas of a building. One is the basement, and the second spot is the attic. There's much information that this space can tell us about old buildings. As Robert mentioned earlier, this building was built in 1862, and we can see how the building was constructed by examining some of the framing that's here. All of the framing material in this building was cut in a lumber mill, in a sawmill. And we know that by carefully looking at the face of the lumber. If you notice carefully, we can see these up and down marks across the surface of the lumber. And that was made by a reciprocating saw in a sawmill. And the saw blade went up and down, cutting the piece of lumber, and it left those marks on the surface of the framing piece. And that's one way historians can help tell how old the building is. So we have a building here that, instead of being constructed by lumber cut by hand, it was cut in a sawmill. Another feature that we can see is the original roof of the building. If we look up, we can see the underside of the wooden cedar shingles. And they are original from when the building was built in 1862, and somewheres around 1900, a slate roof was placed over the original cedar shingle roof. But once inside the attic, and we look up at it, we can see the original cedar shingles. And we notice, too, how they're constructed. There's no decking that the cedar shingles are nailed onto. There's tiny strips of wood that are strung across, and then the cedar shingles are nailed to those strips of wood. And this provides a surface underneath the shingles to breathe and to allow the air to move around and circulate. And that helps dry the shingles out when they get wet and helps preserve them so they don't rot. And that's one of the reasons why cedar shingles roofs have a long lifespan. There's a tremendous amount of weight that needs to be supported. The plaster ceiling that is below me, which we're standing above, has a lot of weight, and not to mention the framing that's spanning the room also carries a lot of weight. And in order to support that weight, there is a truss system that was built to help carry the weight. And we can see a series of framing pieces that come off from the upper part of the roof that come down and tie into the ceiling joists. And there's two series which I'm standing in front of right here. There's some larger framing behind me, and there's also iron tie rods that span between the ceiling joists and the ridge pole, which runs the length of the roof line. And all that together helps distribute the weight and help support the framing and the plaster ceiling. Earlier, we were talking with Robert about the history of the building and some of the architectural features, and he was showing us some of the ornate plaster work. Of course, in those days, they did not use sheetrock. They used plaster as a means to finish off the walls in the building. And where we are at now in the attic space, we can get a good look on how the plaster was applied. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel back part of the insulation so we can see how the plaster, just peel that back, how the plaster was applied. Now the plaster, before it's applied, what they do is they nail up tiny strips of wood called lath. And I have a piece of lath here that had come from another area of the building. They are long, narrow strips, and we can see a side here that are nailed to these joists. And there are tiny spaces in between the lath so that when the plaster is applied, it pushes up between those pieces of lath and it forms a key and anchors the lath, the plaster to the lath and secures it in place. And we can see how, when it was applied wet, how it came up between those spaces and curled over, and when it dried, it locked it into place, and that's what holds the plaster to the ceiling or to the walls. Well, we hope that you enjoyed this first episode of On the History Trail, and that you'll join us for many other exciting adventures. I'm your host and tour guide, Mark Nonestied, and thank you for joining us.